Hi, welcome back to part 11 of the Thinline Telecaster build, and in this episode we're going to be fitting the binding. So in the last episode we cut the neck pocket, and since then I've spent a bit of time cleaning up the edges of the body and especially these transitions where it meets the neck pocket. The next stage is to do the binding, but it's really important before we get there that the edges of the guitar are properly cleaned up. The main reason being is that once we've got the binding on, we don't really want to be doing too much sanding. The binding I'm using is about 1.5 millimeters thick, so if we have to do a bunch of sanding on the edge, there's a chance that we can kind of thin it down in places and it's not going to look consistent. So to that end, I've been round and I've sanded this down to 220 grit, so that's pretty much close to where we need it for the finishing process. The other reason is, of course, we're going to be using a bearing guided cutter to cut the binding channel, and any inconsistency in the edge of this guitar will be reflected in the channel we cut. So to keep the binding nice and smooth and nice looking, you need to make sure that the edge of your guitar is really nice and smooth and nice looking. Now there are commercially available binding bits that you can buy for your router. I know StewMac do a set. I believe NASA got to the moon cheaper than that costs. But this is what I use. It's just a 1/2 inch bearing guided cutter with a couple of 9mm bearings on. And what that means is that gives me approximately a 3mm wider cutter than the bearing, which means ultimately that the gap between the edge of the cutter and the bearing is about 1.5 millimeters, and that's pretty much what I need to cut this channel. Okay, nothing left to do now but to crack on and get it cut. Okay, so I've set the router up so it's just shy of the 6mm that I need, so this will leave me a tiny little bit poking over the top of the guitar once I've stuck the binding in. Okay, and as you can see, that's left a really nice channel there. I'm probably just going to have to whip around with a little bit of fine sandpaper to clean the edge up, but then we can crack on with getting the binding stuck on. Okay, so I've made a quick start on this just to get the end established. There's a number of ways you can attach binding. People use what suits them best, I think. I've tried a variety of different methods. There are specialist glues you can get, which I believe do a good job. I'm not sure how readily available they are in the UK, so I've never used them. I use super glue, and it's always got me good results. And it's basically just a case of going around and doing a little bit at a time. Making sure you get a good bond as you go. You can also buy specialist tapes for this job. And while ever masking tape's working for me, that's what I'll use. The only problem with this method is you do tend to stick yourself to it quite a bit. Now, I've never really felt the need to pre-bend binding too much on a Telecaster. Most of the curves are fine, but I do tend to do a little bit on the horn just to make sure it's going round smoothly. So I'll turn this round now, start working on the other side, just to give that time to kind of harden up again and take that form. Okay, so now we're nearly around that half. There's this little indentation above the neck pocket, which is always quite hard to get in. So what I'm going to do, I'll get some glue in there. And get a clamp. And a socket. I'm just going to use the socket as a clamping caul. That's got that quite nicely. So now we can go back and just finish off around this horn area. Okay, and there we have it. I'm going to leave that a couple of hours now just to dry up. Okay, let's see how we've done. think my initial reaction is that it's gone on really well. There's hardly any gap at all. The bits I've uncovered so far. It's going to take a bit of cleaning up to get the rest of this masking tape off. It kind of reacts with the super glue a little bit, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Okay, so that's all the tape off, or most of the tape off anyway. It's looking good. There's a couple of little gaps, but nothing that I'm worried about. So the next step is to just get any glue residue and the rest of this tape off before we go any further. And to do that, I'm just going to use a card scraper. And as you can see, the card scraper's made a really quick job of that. There's a few little bits that will need tidying up, but it's got the bulk of it off. So with that done, I'm just going to go and do the same around the edge. Okay, so I've just been around the edge with a card scraper, just cleaning it all up. And you might also have seen that I was using a curved scraper on the edge. And the reason I do that is just so I can get in where the binding meets the wood and clean that glue line up without running the risk of thinning the edge of the binding down too much. It's only 1.5 mm thick. So, you know, it's quite easy to take 0.5 mm of the thickness off, and that will be noticeable. So I go in with the curved scraper just to keep away from that edge, and then just finally give it a good tickle up with a bit of sandpaper or something once I've done that. So that's the binding on and cleaned up. The next step is I'm just going to go around it and look for gaps. And I've had a look as I've been cleaning it up, and there really aren't that many, but there are a couple. So next I'm going to show you what I do to clean those up. Okay, so there's only really one gap I'm worried about, and that's just in here. It's not that bad, to be honest, but it is there. So to deal with that, what I've done is I've just taken some little offcuts of the binding and I've dropped them in a little bit of acetone, and what that has done is given me some binding goop. It's basically melted binding. So I'm just going to literally put a little bit of that over the gap, push it in with a scraper, and I'll leave that for probably 15-20 minutes just to set up hard, and then I can scrape it down again like I did the rest, and you won't be able to see that that was there. Okay, so I've left that for about 20 minutes now, and I'm literally just going to give it a quick scrape off with a utility knife blade. Okay, so that was about 2 minutes work, but it's really come out quite nicely. Okay, with that done, only really leaves one more operation for this stage of things, and that's to put the round over on the back. So I'm just going to set this up with some bench cookies. And all I'm going to do is take the small router with a round over bit in and just go right the way round the perimeter of the body, just to ease that edge over a little bit. So that's the binding done. That's one of the last big jobs that needs doing on this body. It's also probably the last chance for a real catastrophic failure to occur. We could have blown out the grain when cutting the binding channel. Thankfully that didn't happen. There are still mistakes I can make going forward with this, but they're the kind of stuff that can be fixed. So that's all good, happy with that. So there's a few little jobs that I need to complete on this body before we start to get it ready for finishing. First off, I need to put the output jack in, and then next I need to drill the holes for the controls. I know I initially said I was going to put the switch up here in the up about. I'm actually thinking now I might put it down here with the rest of the controls. Just seems more logical and kind of more user friendly to me. So let me know what you think about that in the comments. And before I go, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to all the people that have subscribed to the channel recently, who take the time to watch these videos, who contact me in the comments and the various other means that people do. It really does mean a lot to me, and it's one of the prime motivators that keeps me coming down the shed and doing these projects for you to make the videos, especially now it's starting to get a little bit colder, so it could be a lot easier to just stay in the house and not do stuff. So yeah, thanks for that guys, it really does mean a lot to me. If you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button. We're starting to move the channel on a little bit now. It's getting towards 900 subscribers. And for me, that's really positive, because that makes me think that the things that I want to do with this channel, I can do with this channel. So please, let's keep that going. I'll be back very shortly with the start of the finishing process and getting a bit more work done on the neck. Until then, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.